All right, welcome everyone to the very first tour of Chicago Crossing Railroad. So this is a pretty tiny railroad in many ways. It's about 3 feet by 7 feet, so more or less size of a door. And it is meant to represent areas around Chicago with mostly industrial areas and some of the neighborhoods on the south side. It is sort of artistic license. You could probably say it looks like Minneapolis or Milwaukee or any of the major Midwestern cities, and that'd probably be fair. So if it reminds you of that, well, that's a good thing. So the era of the layout is late 80s, mid 90s, and that lets me run some nice stuff that I remember as a kid, and at the same time keep it modern enough to just where I can enjoy some modern operations and scenery and things like that. So we'll start over here onto the left-hand side of the layout, and this is meant to represent a lot of the industrial areas of either Goose Island or the south side of Chicago. Now, over here is a tunnel, and that is what I mean about artistic license. There's really no tunnels in Chicago or hills, but you've got to have somewhere, especially on the corners, just to hide the train. And so it seems pretty reasonable to just have something like that there. In addition, what I think is a brewery, haven't really decided, that also creates kind of a wall, as do a bunch of the industrial buildings behind here, because you can actually lift up and it goes deeper back. There's Finkel Steel in the background, or at least my interpretation of it, on Goose Island, and an industrial warehouse that I don't really know and hasn't been weathered yet. But anyway, we'll start down here. So a lot of the industries don't really have names yet. I don't know what this thing is, but the door comes off, and so you can bring a car into there. It's a Walthers kit, as probably everybody recognizes, but I built it. It's not the pre-built version. You can see some broken down concrete pad that is spackle, kind of a typical thing everybody likes to use. Over here, this is the big industrial complex. Again, maybe it's a brewery with a couple of different tracks in and out for different things. Either that, or it could simply be a grain elevator and a whatever that other type of building is. But anyway, if it's a brewery, then over here we can have areas with corn syrup or additives or things like that. There's a little 3D printed ladder up to the top of the corn syrup car. Maybe that makes it a bakery, no idea. But anyway, there's also, as you can see here, a track for hoppers as well as for loading off of that building. I've got a 3D printed track mobile over there that, presumably would be pulling the cars through into the grain bin. And then this is kind of my favorite scene right over here. So if you zoom back out, that track off of the branch line sort of curves in, and it curves into this loading dock area over here. And that is just kind of a grassy, beaten down track. It's all static grass over there, just to kind of give it that overgrown look. Then you have a little factory over here of some sort. This is not rail served, but it does have a loading dock back there. And of course, got some buildings over here. So alongside that, we've got a loading dock back here. This is actually a kit bash of a Walthers kit over there, and with a bunch of paint chipping and things like that on the various air handling units. But that's basically a loading dock. All the concrete over here is actually kids' craft foam that I painted and scored and put grass in and things like that to look like concrete. So coming to the back, again, this is Finkel Steel over here. That was a north side business. It's now actually a south side business, so it doesn't matter too much. A lot of license with it. Finkel Steel normally is just they make custom castings and things like that. Here we've got loading and unloading of some steel coils. You can see a loader in the back there as well, and a loading dock over there. That's the other part of that Walthers beer distributor kit. But in any case, you know, just provides some nice background interest and the possibility for boxcars, as well as a bunch of steel coil gondolas. On the south side, the idea is there's a lot of steel, especially in Indiana, so this gives me an opportunity to just represent that type of industry here. Up in the front, past this half-weathered grain elevator, this is a random abandoned industry. I just named it the Variety Company Limited. And in Chicago, there's a whole bunch of empty industrial lots where you have things like excess shipping containers that are more or less just set aside to sit there. And so that's kind of what those represent, is basically an industry like that. They obviously haven't been moved around a lot. They've been graffitied. I do all that by hand. And this car is a little Kato 70s car that I weathered and painted by hand. And, you know, just very tiny brushes on something like that. So what you kind of get is basically a really nice sort of stacked up and urbanized impression off of there. And I always think that's really, really nice. So over, this is kind of the Chicago River. You can decide it's either the north or south branch based on what you like. And the first business on the other side is a scrap yard. This has got a couple of my custom weathered gondolas in there, ready to receive scrap, and it's got a little burrow crane that sits over in the edge there, as well as one of these little cats. This thing I actually customized. I took off the scoop and put on a 3D printed grappler, which would be more appropriate for a scrap industry. And then this is a custom made fence, basically just a kind of metal fence, and then some custom graffiti on this rail car, which is probably a tool shed for the scrap industry itself. It's been graffitied on that side, and it forms part of the fence too. And scrap comes in here by barge. Maybe there's a couple of examples of that in Chicago. So over here is the little service road that comes out. There's some abandoned trackage over there. Much the same as actually back in this industry here. Is what I did is I made, again, a kind of a scrap, a spackle sort of pad, and then I just buried some N-scale track in there as if at one point this had connected back to this rather overgrown siding closer to the river. So anyway, that's the scrap yard. If we zoom back out, then we've got an oil handling or petrochemical handling factory over here. Haven't entirely decided what it makes, but in the meantime, I'm trying to put some fencing around it, and it's got a nice little concrete pad there, as well as an extra track for other things. Most of this is 3D printed. The only thing that is actually just a plastic kit are these two storage tanks right here. Everything else is 3D. Or this building, which is just Pike stuff. So coming back over to this side, we have sort of a little suburban area. Don't know which one this would be. Maybe you could call it Blue Island. Again, there's a little bit of license here just because if you look at where the branch line sort of comes back from the river and up there, what you can see is a little bit of bluff, you know, right there. That'd be something more you'd find in Western Illinois. But just gives me a little something to work with here. Again, hiding the train sometimes is a good thing. So we've got a small station, then we've got a small neighborhood over here. This is definitely representative of the south or north side of Chicago. The buildings themselves, these two that are right here, those are actually 3D printed facades based on actual buildings in Chicago in the Pilsen neighborhood. So that is kind of a way to just provide a sense of place. The average kit out here doesn't really look like a Chicago building, so the only way to get that is honestly to just 3D print the stuff. And I think for this building here, that's one of those older Concor kits or something like that. I think that building was actually representative of a real building in Wisconsin or something like that. And then over here, this is kind of a multi-purpose industrial area. It's sort of in progress. Right now I've got a large building on there that'll probably be a bakery fed by that grain elevator. But you can actually take that off, and it's just a big concrete pad over there. So you can put down a team track or something like that. Again, it's kind of a double track siding. It can be used as an interchange, sort of whatever you want. This building is nicer though because it provides a bit of a view block. Because over here is basically just a staging yard. And that's kind of a nice place just to be able to drop trains and things like that. Again, a tunnel, definitely some license taken, but it just hides that corner. In Chicago, you have, things like some abutments and tracks that fly over other tracks, but really nothing that would be kind of a solid mass like this to actually hide a train. These drawbridges here and over here are non-functioning. The lift bridge is a custom build. That's that kit that everybody sees. It's like Concord or something like that. And then over here, another custom bridge. Some concrete somebody threw in the river. It's the South Branch. It's kind of disgusting, but it's sort of nice and green and happy. That's just some gloss Mod Podge on top of some resin on top of some paint. So anyway, that is basically the Chicago Crossing layout. Can zoom back out and just get the full impression. So it's pretty small, but the beautiful thing about it is you can run trains at kind of the slow speed that they run in Chicago, even on the main line. And so it gives you some nice little rail fanning opportunities to sit back and just enjoy some trains going by. Well, anyway, that's the layout. Updates to come as things get working on it. So thanks for watching.